Alright, so in today's video I want to talk about Mia Winters and her involvement in the current storyline of Resident Evil 7 and 8, because it's quite big, and she has been quite sidelined through the first two games so far, and a lot of her story and her connection with everything has been mainly through the lore of the game, and brief, like, one-liners and conversations and stuff like that. So I do kind of want to go over what they could do with her in the next game, as she is really involved in the story more than you would think. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Again, spoilers for the overall story of the current Resident Evil games. If you haven't played them, skip the video, because it does go into a lot of the background story that is quite heavy in terms of how the games play out. So, yeah, you've been warned. Here we go. So, Mia Winters is actually was working for what seems to be one of the main villains for the current line of Resident Evil games. And this is a smaller company called The Connections. If you don't know who they are, I have a video up on the channel going over who exactly they are and what we know of them so far. So I'll leave a link to that in the description. You can go check that out and watch it as and when you want to. But to sum up her involvement in what they're doing, she was tasked with being the caretaker or kind of parent figure for Evelyn being the main villain of Resident Evil 7, and in some fashion she had some kind of involvement with her creation, as she was on the team that helped make Evelyn. Now again, just to kind of sum up kind of briefly what the Connections do, they basically, simply put, make bioweapons and sell them on the black market for profit, basically. Think of Umbrella, but a bit more shady, less like well known, really. That's essentially their kind of vibe. But again, for more information, for more detail about who they are and who is involved with them and how they relate to like Umbrella and stuff like that, video in the description will tell you everything you need to know. Now, at the end of Resident Evil 7 and between the events of Resident Evil 8, through the lore of the game, through the files on the game, I believe you get these files through the kind of like deluxe edition of Village. It's like the Baker incident report. You find out that Chris knows that she's involved, and she kind of makes him promise not to tell Ethan, and he doesn't, but I think they do kind of briefly talk about it. But in order to kind of get Ethan and Mia away from everything, she agrees to kind of share what she knows and work with Chris to kind of bring down the Connections, and that's as far as it really went, because in Village they are practically non-existent. Mia's barely in the game anyway, and they're never brought up once. Now this is where it could lead into the next game. So at the end of the game, in Village, you find out the BSA are using bioweapons, and it's against everything they ever do, so they're kind of corrupt at this point, and Chris is mad pissed, so he wants to go and sort them out. Now, my leading idea is that these bioweapons that the BSA are using aren't created by the BSAA, they are more provided by the Connections, and because the Connections is such a small group and they're so shady, because they're not so well known, they can kind of slip under the radar, and no one will really know where they're coming from. So that's my leading idea with them, and I really do think the BSA have been corrupted by the Connections, because some of the higher-ups in the Connections are kind of like past kind of high-ups within Umbrella, so it's obviously the same kind of motive behind Umbrella that the Connections have at the moment. So my idea with Mia is maybe if she's a playable character or she's involved more in the story, she is there to basically help Chris get to the bottom of who they are, what they're doing, and where they are, and hopefully take them out with the help of some members of his team, whether that's the Helm squad from Village or some more kind of, you know, experienced people he knows like Jill or Leon, Claire. You know, they could all be there to kind of bring down this big evil company before they get like too cocky or they get too like worldwide, and it's just all over again with Raccoon City and Resident Evil 6 and stuff like that. Like, you don't want to get to that point again, so they're trying to get ahead of the game. Which would be a really cool idea for the story, and I think Mia would really be involved in it. Do I think that Mia should be a playable character in 9? It would be cool if she was. Obviously, you do play as her briefly in 7, when you do like the flashback period on the boat, which is pretty cool. It does give you a bit more information on that side of things, but I think it would be cool to see her more involved in the next game, as 7 and 8 were primarily based around Ethan, which makes sense because he was the main character of both games. But now that he's kind of quote-unquote dead, you know, Mia could take the spotlight away from Rose, and maybe she's trying to bring down this company that kind of her mother worked for all this time. Maybe she blames Mia for her dad dying because, you know, she created Evelyn in the first place, so technically it's entirely her fault. So, you know, there's a whole thing they could do with that, and it would be a really interesting concept to see it come into the next game. But yeah, that about sums the whole thing up. There's not a lot to go off of with the connections at the minute. Again, they were kind of sidelined completely in Resident Evil Village, and only very briefly kind of spoken about in the main game and the DLC of Resident Evil 7. So hopefully in RE9 they do come into a more of a kind of forefront along with the BSAA. But yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know what Mia's involvement could be. Let me know what you think it could be. Let me know what you think they would do with her. And yeah, thank you all for coming by. Remember to leave a like on the video and subscribe for more Resident Evil and other Capcom games content. And I'll see you all in the next one.